to the third team in this division last year, but who did make the playoffs, who did win a playoff game in Minnesota, and then obviously fell well short when they played the Eagles, and that is the New York Giants. And the one thing I would say about the Giants this year is there hasn't been any radical changes as opposed to previous years with not just head coaches, but offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. They've managed to hold on to every coaching staff in which they had. There was numerous different interviews for Kafka, the offensive coordinator. Even Wink Martindale got in on the action interviewing for the coach quite a few times, and it was a big relief for most Giants fans to see that the transition is still in place. Brian Daboll obviously doing a fantastic job last year, along with GM Joe Shane, who we were fortunate to have on the show. I suppose the big storyline for this offseason, I guess, would be the Daniel Jones stroke Saquon Barkley scenario, because one was going to get tagged and the other was going to get the contract. In the end, it played out that Daniel Jones got the contract. And I remember speaking to Colin in January where the 30 million marker was put down. Then it was 35, and then before we knew it was up to 40, and he got that contract in the end. I see the reasons, the rationale behind it, because I didn't think there was anything else out there that would fit into what Daboll wants to do offensively. We saw last year, and much improved Daniel Jones. But I still agree with most people that the question marks are still out there for him. They didn't do a lot in free agency. I'll come to you, Connor. We touched on it last week, albeit briefly, the Darren Waller trade, third round pick. Excuse me. I mean, when he's fully fit and functioning, he's arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. It's a big upgrade on what the Giants have had.
Yeah, he is a specimen as well. Like, he's an unbelievable condition, as you say, when he's fit, and when he's 6'6", he runs like a deer for a guy that size, and what a weapon to have at your disposal, in addition to the other weapons as you've already outlined. I mean, the thing about Daniel Jones as well is I have a fondness for him because I just think he's a big time player. Like, is he the best quarterback in the league? No, I don't think we're fooling anybody by trying to advance that argument. But when he needed to, he showed up in the playoffs, won a playoff game at his first attempt. There's a lot of great quarterbacks, a lot of Hall of Fame quarterbacks who didn't manage that feat. They were completely overmatched against the Eagles. I don't think anything that happened that day particularly reflects badly on him. You like to see guys who step up when the moment calls for it. And so far in his career, he's shown that he's able to do that. I place a lot of stock in that. If you go back to, remember Bill Belichick being asked this back in the days when there was, and you'll be familiar with this argument, there was the debate over whether Eli Manning actually belonged in the Hall of Fame, even though he'd won 2 Super Bowls, because you had to look at the stats and you looked at the regular season career. Belichick said, look, the definition for me of a Hall of Fame player is the guy that shows up in the big moments, in the biggest games, when his team need him the most. And Jones looks like one of those players to me from what we've seen. I'd be kind of excited if I was a Giants fan going into this season. I think Daboll is their X factor. He's just a great coach, and what he's shown last year, again, with far from the most talented outfit in the league is, and again, as we've already outlined, in a very tough division, you can get them moving in the right direction. It's not going to be easy for them, but I think what they've done well. Like, signing Jones was the right thing to do, or with the contract that they've given, it's not crazy money, given where he is and given what else was available or what wasn't available. To your point, they'll have Saquon for the next season. They had to franchise tag him in the circumstances. I think that was the only option for them. They've added another big weapon in Waller. They're in decent shape on the other side of the ball as well. I think I'd be modestly excited going into this season if I was a Giants fan.
Got him, not only Waller, but Paris Campbell picked up in free agency. Jalen Hyatt in the draft. I know he's third round. People thought he might go late first, early second. Hasn't played a snap in the NFL yet, so the jury obviously will be out. But they're doing their utmost to put weapons around them, and they brought in a running back within the draft. Saquon obviously will have to play on the tag. But are you as confident as, say, Connor is? I know you have your question marks and still do over Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I wouldn't be nearly as confident or complimentary of the Giants' approach. And I say that as somebody who really likes Brian Daboll and what Joe Shane has done in his time there. But I see what you're saying, right? I see there wasn't a whole lot out there. And I get it from Daboll and Joe Shane's perspective. You don't want to take a step back. But ultimately, they now have a guy who they're paying more than Kirk Cousins. And the question has always been, like with Kirk Cousins, Florio talks about purple purgatory. My concern for the Giants with Daniel Jones is you put yourself in that category where, yeah, you might get to the playoffs and you go to the wild card round and you win that, but are you going past the division round? Are you going to a conference championship? Are you taking yourself out of the sweepstakes? Look, they backed him for 2 years, ultimately, given the dead cap that they would have to take. The Giants don't seem, and the Maras don't seem like the team you love just down the road, who are willing to eat that dead cap and move on. So I think Daniel Jones would have to have an extraordinarily poor year for them to move on. To me, they kind of humstrung themselves. Like, I think there's a considerable ceiling ultimately on what they can do. The other part of it for me, yeah, they have brought in weapons, but like the Giants, one of the reasons Connor is right in that they didn't have a chance against the Eagles last year, but one of the reasons they didn't have a chance against the Eagles because they couldn't stop the run. The Eagles just ran all over the Giants time and time again. They weren't the only team that did that. And I worry that the Giants haven't done enough to address that. That would be my concern. I did think it was interesting. This week we're recording it. Heard that Frazier was on his sabbatical from the Bills. Let's see if he goes back there next year. But he spent time with the Giants, and we know the connections that he has, given the personnel that are in the front office and on the coaching staff there. That was an interesting move, shall we say. But to me, yeah, I think there are serious question marks around, just how far this Giants team. They'll be super competitive. We know that Daboll will have them there. But I think to me, the divisional round is the ceiling for this Giants team.
Colin touched on how we couldn't stop the Eagles, and that was a big issue last year. They couldn't stop the run. They've done their utmost, I guess, to try and correct that with two key signings in the offseason defensively, Okereke from the Colts linebacker and Robinson, defensive tackle, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams. I suppose it's one of those situations most Giants fans are reasonably confident going into the season because of what's been done to move on from the roster which you had last year. I'm going to make a bold statement now in where are we, June? I usually make those crazy statements in September. Daniel Jones has a better season than Aaron Rodgers next season. Book it in now. But again, I don't know what that will mean in terms of touchdowns, but we'll see. I'll probably come back and pull that one back come September. Anyway, that's my bold statement for this division. Moving on to the Cowboys, and I mean, we look at the Cowboys, and I think we spoke briefly about it previously offline, how they go and play the 49ers 2 years in a row in the playoffs, and both games have such crazy endings. The one the previous year where they couldn't get the snap off the